There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. For CEO Richard Lawson, that moment happened on a rainy Tuesday morning, in a gleaming skyscraper that bore his name. The storm outside matched the tension in the boardroom where billion-dollar deals were being dissected. But just beyond the glass doors of that sleek, high-rise office, a life was unraveling. Maria Alvarez, a quiet cleaner who had worked in the building for 3 years without ever drawing attention, was hiding something beneath her uniform, bruises that told a story no one had asked to hear. That is, until Richard happened to look up and truly see her for the first time. What happened next would ripple through the entire company, shifting not just policies, but hearts. Folded hands. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Folded hands. Maria Alvarez was 26 years old and moved like someone trying not to be seen. She was always early, always efficient, and never spoke unless spoken to. People said she was shy, maybe even cold, but the truth was far more tragic. Behind that silence lived fear. Her nights were filled with shouts, slammed doors, and the echo of a man's fists against her ribs. Her boyfriend, Caleb, had once been charming. Now he was a ghost of that man, replaced by something cruel and unpredictable. But Maria didn't know how to leave. She had no family, few friends, and the job as a night cleaner at Lawson Enterprises was her only lifeline. Her body bore the cost of her silence, a fresh bruise on her cheekbone, fingerprints hidden under her sleeve, and eyes that avoided mirrors. Richard Lawson, on the other hand, was the opposite of invisible. At 38, he was one of the youngest self-made CEOs in the city, admired for his sharp instincts and relentless discipline. But his success came at a cost. Divorced, distant from his teenage daughter, and surrounded by people who only said what he wanted to hear, Richard had built his empire alone. He didn't see the cleaners. He didn't see the assistants. He didn't see anyone below the top floor. Until that morning. It began with a spilled coffee in the executive lounge. Richard had returned early from a client meeting and walked in just as Maria was cleaning up a mess left behind by a careless VP. She flinched when she saw him, her hand covering her cheek instinctively. And for a moment, their eyes met. Not the kind of glance that passes and is forgotten, but a stare that holds, lingers, and speaks. Her eyes were red. Not just from exhaustion. From something deeper. He noticed the purplish mark, faint but unmistakable. Bruises didn't lie. The memory of his own daughter crying after her mother's remarriage, the way he had dismissed her tears as just a phase, slammed into him. Something about Maria's silent suffering haunted him. He took a step forward, and she instinctively took one back. He raised his hands slowly, trying not to alarm her. "Who did this to you?" he wanted to ask, but the question felt too sharp, too soon. So instead, he did something completely out of character. He sat down. Maria stood frozen. No one, in 3 years, had ever spoken to her like she mattered. But Richard asked if she needed water. If she wanted to sit. If she was safe. She shook her head each time, but her hands trembled. When he softly repeated, "You don't have to pretend here," something broke in her. A single tear slipped down her cheek. And then she ran. Richard didn't sleep that night. He couldn't shake the image of her pain. The next morning, he pulled her personnel file and found out her full name, her emergency contact, and her salary, which was barely enough to cover rent in the city. He called HR and asked questions he'd never thought to ask. Were they offering domestic abuse support? Mental health services? Why weren't there systems in place to check on vulnerable employees? No one had answers. So Richard decided he would be the answer. Maria didn't show up for work for 2 days. On the third, she returned, pale, quieter than usual. But something had changed. The receptionist greeted her with warmth. A care package waited in her locker. And later that evening, when she went to the janitor's closet, she found Richard sitting there, waiting. This time he didn't ask questions. He just handed her a card, one that included the number for a women's shelter, a legal advisor, and a therapist. "If you ever need to talk to someone other than me," he said gently, "they're here for you." Maria stared at the card, her fingers trembling. "Why?" she finally whispered. Richard didn't answer immediately. Then, his voice low and cracked, he said, "Because someone once told my daughter to stay quiet. And I've hated myself every day for not listening sooner." That night, Maria made a choice. Not to fix everything, but to take the first step. She called the shelter. She spoke to a counselor. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Richard quietly paid for her sessions. He personally signed off on her transfer to a daytime cleaning shift. And he began a silent campaign inside his own company, establishing policies that protected workers like Maria, introducing anonymous reporting lines, and mandating empathy training for upper management. Whispers spread in the building. The CEO was changing. He no longer brushed past janitors without a glance. He took time to sit with receptionists, baristas, and interns. And when a junior staffer faced harassment from her manager, it was Richard himself who escorted the man out of the building. People were stunned. The media called it a PR stunt. But those closest to him saw the difference, in his eyes, in his silence, in the way he now listened. Maria slowly healed. She filed for a restraining order. She moved into a shared apartment with other survivors. And one afternoon, after receiving her GED with the help of company-sponsored classes, she found a letter in her locker. It was from Richard. It read simply, "You are stronger than you know. When you're ready, there's a desk job waiting for you. No pressure. Just belief." 3 months later, Maria walked into the HR department with a smile on her face and hope in her step. She wore a soft lavender blouse, no longer hiding her arms. Her eyes were clear. Her posture, proud. And Richard, watching from the balcony above, felt something shift inside him again. Not pride. Not relief. But grace. Loudspeaker, if this story moved you, if Maria's courage or Richard's transformation touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support keeps these powerful stories alive. And remember, it takes only one act of kindness to change a life. Loudspeaker. Speech balloon, before you go, we have a special request. Comment below with a single word that represents what this story meant to you. Was it hope? Strength? Redemption? We'd love to hear from you. Speech balloon.